Sarah, welcome. Welcome to Ongoing Changes. So good to have you
Thank you.
back. I guess we all have different journeys, and you have gone down the path of nurturing those that are coming forward. And they're the ones that are going to be, I guess, the ones that hold the earth well
Mm,
after we're gone.
mm.
And it's so important because they are our future. And they're the future of the earth. So without further ado, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, as you said, I'm an educator. I would probably describe myself slightly differently than you did with worldly, but I have traveled across different parts of the world, so that is
Mm,
accurate. It would just
mm,
never occur to me, even as
yeah,
someone who is living, we call it upside down world within my family, because North America in the US is on the opposite side of the world from Australia. And so for my little nieces and nephews, we talk about how Nana lives in the upside down world, or she refers to Australia as the upside down world. So that's appropriate.
very appropriate.
And right now, I suppose I've left the education system as a teacher about 5 years ago, and I've been running my own business. And I work
Mm,
mostly with neurodivergent kids, tutoring and doing. I work with homeschool kids. I work with kids in mainstream, and I did not set out to do this, but a large part of my work has become school advocacy and
mm,
helping schools understand kids' disability related needs and ensure that their rights are being upheld while they're at school,
mm,
which is very precarious ground to tread
yeah,
on. And I find that it's interesting because the Australian education system is quite a bit different and the laws and things are different. And everyone, it's sort of that stereotype everyone in America just sues. If they don't like something, they just go to court and sue.
yeah.
Well, they kind of do for the school stuff. And so I find it so interesting in terms of those mechanisms and trying to reach resolution because it's a much lengthier process. And if
Mm,
you want to sort of take it, escalate it to court, you're going to federal court and getting a barrister and
mm,
challenging federal law. So navigating that is interesting. And I'm always looking or trying novel things to support kids, sort
mm,
of outside of mainstream, like the medical model and even the education model to support kids. And the schools look at me a lot because I have these sort of outside the box ideas that are doable and feasible. Like I've done them in a school
mm,
and they act like it's crazy. So it's a bit of a tightrope act,
mm.
and trying to balance what's best for the kid with the capacity and capability of schools and school teams.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you for that. The education system is very different to North America, South America, Australia, and we are the land from down under, you know. So upside down is pretty close. Reminds me of, yeah, many things. The thing is that the education department I find very rigid. I mean, one of my daughters was tried to get kicked out of school because she came in midway through term one or semester one. And according to the principal, she wasn't quite ready to start school. And yet I knew as a parent that she was more than capable and therefore she'd become more of an introvert. Now, there is a law here in Australia that any kid that moves around due to whatever circumstance, and this was aimed especially at the arms because a lot of the people that are part of the forces, they move around a lot so that they don't get either on the back foot or, you know, any kind of um, dis- disability. They allow the kids to be able to transfer between systems. And so we use that, saying, well, just because she came from Queensland, Queensland's got a different starting age school to what Victoria has, but she shouldn't be disadvantaged because she's come from interstate. So we had to fight it through the education department. And he was like, you got to be kidding me, right? Anyway, so she ended up staying in school. Now, moving forward to today, I have a friend of mine who's got a 13 and 8-year-old. The 13-year-old is being deemed to be ADHD, and so therefore she is on Ritalin so that she can cope with being in school all day long and do what needs to be done according to the ticks and balances. The other one, who's 8 years old, the only way that he can cope with being at school is to medicate him, and he's on antidepressants. When my son was 5, her teacher said, oh, he's ADHD, he has to go on Ritalin, start of story, end of story. And I said, no, he's not. And I absolutely refused to medicate him, go down the drugs, because what are they doing? Putting a Band-Aid on it. And I mean, he's 34 now and he's gone through school. So he didn't have ADHD. I think he's dyslexic more than anything, but I never had him tested either. It's like, why do we have to put people into boxes? Does it make it easier for us to be able to get them to do what we want? Or is it a sausage machine that we're doing in order to get the kids into society so they can feel a whole? Like, are you seeing a change in what kids were diagnosed as 5 years ago as opposed to what they're diagnosed now? Do you see it changes? And if so, where?
Yeah, I think I've been in the education sector as a student involved in like uni level education classes, doing community outreach type programs and community based programs since 2002.
Right.
And I mean, that's that's almost 25 years. That's a really long time. And but I've seen a drastic uptick in and this is I was in America then. I've only been in Australia the past 10 years. But the number of neurodivergent diagnoses, and I'm talking ADHD, autism, specific learning disabilities like dyslexia, even things like Down syndrome could be classed as neurodivergent. Just to paint for the audience sort of all of these factors, there has been a huge uptick, and this is something I've talked to my mom about a lot because she has a lot of questions, and this comes up a lot in our conversation because I have a niece who's been diagnosed with ADHD and autism. I have a nephew who they're investigating diagnosis, but I would be shocked if he didn't get an autism and ADHD diagnosis. They're here in Australia. And then I have family in America. And out of 4 kids, one is a baby, like he's not even 18 months old, but he doesn't even walk yet. So we have no idea what's happening. He has a 3-year-old brother who is definitely neurodivergent. He has a 5-year-old sister who is definitely neurodivergent, and a 12-year-old sister is definitely neurodivergent. And so I can see it and I hear about their behaviors and I know what's there. And the question my mom has, and she asks the same question a lot, and we come at it from different angles, but we kind of end up at the same thing. Do we just have better systems of recognition? And is that why kids are getting more diagnoses? Which I think in one vein, yes, because we're recognizing that you don't just have to have sort of these really high support needs, intensive, nonverbal level 3 autism behaviors to get an autism diagnosis. and it's more of a spectrum now, and we have a level 1 diagnosis that used to be Asperger's, and there's a bigger mix, but they it sort of comes down to the same thing. And I think similar with ADHD, and there is more awareness. Like when I was in uni and had just started teaching, there was ADD and there was ADHD. There weren't
Yes.
3 different types of ADHD.
Mm.
And that has changed things a lot. And so it's not just the hyperactive kids who are getting diagnosed now. Like, we're recognizing that kids who have inattentive ADHD are having these difficulties. But I think all of it begs the question. It does beg the question that my mom's asking: is it just we are more sensitive to it and more aware of it, so we see it more? Like, once you see something, you can't unsee it. Or are there more kids presenting this way? And I think back to the classes that I taught, full of 25 to 30 students. And I truly do think that even without the diagnoses then, because kids weren't getting diagnosed then unless it was kind of extreme, I still think there's more prevalence now. I think the
Mm.
prevalence of neurodevelopmental circumstance, it's not like a disease, but like a diagnosis in kids, it is more prevalent. And that creates a whole other series of questions for me, like, why is this happening? What does it mean? How does this come about? And raises all these other questions.
Okay, so if we looked at it in a different way, throughout the ages and the decades, that timeline in space, people were deemed and required to behave a certain way. And if you didn't fit that norm, then there was something wrong with you. Is it possible that our baseline has shifted to such an extent that the kids that are coming through are actually normal and that we're in the spectrum? Because if the consciousness of the world is shifting and people becoming more high vibrations, because those kids can't even stand noise. So, what is happening to them that makes them so sensitive? Whereas their parents and their previous generations, they weren't as sensitive. It was just a bit of a mess. And like you said, we used to have ADD, ADHD, we had Asperger's. Now, Asperger's has got kicked out because no, we don't do Asperger's anymore.
Hmm.
So the DSM, we're up to version 5, they're the ones that come up and say, well, if you have A, B, C, D, and E, you're deemed to be this, and therefore we're going to drug you with this. If you're X, Y, and Z, you get this drug. And so it goes. I mean, the SMV5, people had non-disclosure agreements signed prior to them sitting down and putting it together. Prior to that, there was no disclosure. So therefore, they freely told you what happened. And most of the people, the board members that put it together, belong to pharmaceuticals. That's all they're doing. So maybe we should be looking at reevaluating our baseline, teaching kids in a different way rather than trying to push a round peg in a square hole and moving things differently.
Yeah, I think we could do a whole separate episode on the corruption within any type of big business system and the schemes where
Yeah.
money is getting made. And
Mm.
then we would probably have like most of the answers to why the world works the way it does. But I do think we're living in a very different world. And even I saw something on social media recently that got me thinking about something about cell phones or texting or something that was or wasn't available sort of around the early 2000s.
Yes.
And I think I was talking to my sister about it because we didn't text. There was not texting in 2001 when we got our first cell phones. Like, there was no texting. You could call people, and that was what your phone was for. And you didn't even necessarily take it everywhere you went. And
Yeah.
that really got me thinking that I'm not blaming, I'm not saying like cell phones are why kids are neurodivergent. That has nothing
No.
to do with it. But just these changes that we've seen in a very compressed amount of time, looking sort of at humanity as a whole and looking at the technological changes. And there's, which I haven't verified this information, it's from social media, but there's content about how we consume more information in a single day now than our grandparents would have consumed in their lifetime.
Yes.
So we've got
Yep.
these brains, like our brains. I'm not even going to get into our brains and consciousness and them being separate, other than acknowledging that they are. But we've got this hardware system that is supposed to just keep up and that is supposed to just adapt on a dime.
Mm.
And I think looking at, we do have to change what we're doing. And I
Yes.
think we do need to look at um, different methodologies of determining what's normal. Because
Mm.
if we look at things like the people who have the best ideas throughout history are always painted as madmen, sort of during their era,
Mm.
and they're crazy. Look at
Mm.
Tesla, and
Exactly.
it's some of the greatest ideas ever, and just written off, painted as a madman. But that comes back to the money conversation and what was happening there. But I do think the kids, I'm of two minds on this. I do think the kids are sort of they're adapting to what's coming, because I think
Mm.
looking at
Mm.
the world as a whole, we need to be more multifaceted in the way we approach things, which is great from an ADHD standpoint, sort of the jack of all trades, and being able to pay attention to this and then this and then this and then this. And having, my husband has an ADHD diagnosis and he's a fiction author. He's got a bunch
Oh.
of things in the works, but he'll come home and he'll have been driving home from work, and he's got all these ideas for how it's all connecting.
Mm.
And I'm like, I don't understand how you're doing this. Like, I think in this linear progression. And I think we do need these minds that operate divergently to
Yes.
see all the things and take all the things in, to consider sort of the world we live in.
Mm.
On the other hand, I think it begs another question of, if some people are like this and don't have interventions or support, okay, but some people are like this and have interventions or support, and then they function vastly differently.
Mm.
So that says to me there are things that we can do and tools and strategies, not necessarily like some magic pill, but there are other things that we can do that could impact
Mm.
somebody's neurological function and how they're interacting with the world.
Mm.
And so I don't think it's the DSM people would hate me if they knew I existed because I don't think it's a static situation.
No.
I think it's dynamic. And this sort of gets into your, not acupuncture specifically, but the medicine side of things, that even if you present with, let's say, really common for neurodivergent kids, an MTHFR mutation, and you're having trouble processing different things in your body and you don't have the right nutrients, so your body's out of balance. And obviously Eastern medicine has different language for that than Western, but bringing that balance back, and then you suddenly can function better, and even your neurological processing changes. Well, how
Yeah.
do we say then? I don't think kids should be constantly re-diagnosed, but it moves the needle.
Yeah. And the other problem is that the kids are being bombarded by chemicals that are not natural to their body. It keeps the whole metabolism out of kilter. And it's like cortisol. If you have cortisol or adrenaline, you don't have to worry about it because you're getting the kicks that you need And therefore, your body's going to say, well, if you don't need me, I'm going to shut down because you're getting it elsewhere. So we have no idea what the ramification is going to be 5, 10 years down the track. None whatsoever, because it hasn't been happening for long enough. And why are we trying to get these kids to be in today's society when today's society is changing so drastically and quickly? If you ask me what happened to the past 8 months, I'd say it's flown. Like you blinked and we're here.
Yeah.
I get it. We do ingest a lot more information than what we used to. I listen to YouTube at 1.5 to 2 times the speed because I can't be bothered. It needs to be quicker. It's like, get to the point. So if people listen to this at twice the speed, absolutely understand it. So we are ingesting more and more information. So what they're doing is not working. Putting the kids through a drug system, that's not going to work either. So it would be nice if they looked more closely at what else they can do to ensure that these kids of today are going to be well functioning and healthy individuals when they get out the other end. One of my clients, she had anxiety. She goes to a Western doctor. The doctor says, here, take these pills, they'll be great. She said he was good for a while, they worked and I wasn't as anxious. Then I started having bladder problems. And a lot of people take this stuff because they know, I don't want to know what the side effects are because I can't change them and I'm going to take it anyway. And then it took us about 2 or 3 months to get her off the drugs to go into natural herbs. And then it took another year and a half for her bladder to start coming good. And when people come to you, they say, well, fix me in a week or two. And you think, hang on a minute, how long have you been putting up with this? 2, 3 years? And you want me to perform magic? Well, we have to get your body strong first. And so if we're now debilitating those kids' bodies, if the body isn't strong, the mind can't be strong because the lymphatics can't clean all the stuff out of the brain. Where are we going to end up? I mean, this is not all gloom and doom, but every time you try to go against the education department, instead of saying, let's collaborate, we'll give you some money, we'll give you some funding so you can show how good doing it this way is. I mean, there were some high schools here that had a Steiner integration into their high school. So there were mainstream high schools with a Steiner through it. They work really well.
Yeah. There's so many options. And I think a part of the problem is we're in this time, the fourth turning essentially. So this 80 to 100 year cycle where we're in a collapse of systems and ways of doing things. And so the systems that worked, and there's a bunch of systems that overlap. It's not just this 80 to 100 year cycle, but we're at this pinnacle of all of the end of all of these different timelines and timeframes of similar cycles, all stacked up on top of each other, all happening at the same time. We're not in like the middle of something or the beginning, like they're all coming to the end. They've all synced up. And so we're seeing what's not working. And it's the systems are collapsing on themselves. And we're seeing it in real time. It doesn't take any outside influence. They're just collapsing upon themselves without a push. And I think that's what we're seeing in education. I think that's what we're seeing in Western sort of mainstream medicine. But in education particularly, we're using, I think we talked about this last podcast we did, the factory system for education. Like we're just assembly line, kid, move them on the conveyor belt through. Everyone kind of gets the same thing. And some schools are doing a good job at individualizing, getting individual supports, paying attention to kids' needs, bringing in play-based models, bringing in Steiner models, bringing in Reggio models, bringing in Montessori models. that are actually based on child development and how the brain grows and attachment styles. But most are not, because that was never their intended purpose. And so why would they be doing those things? And I think that poses a lot of problems. But I find it really concerning. You have no idea how many schools I have offered for free to support their staff in understanding a child's disability presentation or collaboratively developing documents. So that way they're not developing documents, bringing it to the parents, and then I'm essentially marking it up with a million questions and things we need to change. I've offered professional development to schools, and they're not interested. They don't want to collaborate. They don't want to engage. There's been 2 schools who I have gone in and done professional development for them, but it was because a mom of a kid at the school organized it and she paid for it. That's the only reason. No other school has ever taken me up on it. And sometimes I don't always say, oh, for free, but there are heaps of times I do. And I find that as an educator, just disconcerting, because if 30% of the kids in a classroom are neurodivergent, which that's the stats that we're at right now, 30%,
Wow.
then we have to do something differently. And there's not an interest in doing something differently. It's a very much still my way or the highway, which I find interesting because even teachers my age, like, to me, my way or the highway is a very like baby boomer approach to life. That's my mom. That's how we grew up. That's the Gen X and I think millennial experience largely. And it's not even people of that sort of boomer age who are doing it. It's even brand new teachers. This is what we're doing. This is how it works. Well, what about what the kids need?
Yeah, it's really crazy. So going back to the baseline, I definitely think we need a different baseline because whatever it is that we're doing is not working. So when I was going to school, it was you do it this way. And I used to kick back because I used to say, but I can do it this way and it still works. My maths teacher would say, doing wrong things doesn't mean you're right. I said, but I get the right answer every time. So why is it doing it differently wrong? Anyway, she would tell me off and she said I couldn't teach the rest of the kids, which I thought was very unfair. But when I did my teacher's training, because I thought, oh yeah, I'll become a teacher, I'll teach while my kids are little. So mine was secondary. They had very much a mentality that they knew what they wanted to do. They had a purpose. You know, there were 12, 13, 14-year-olds. Oh, I'm not going to go to school. I'm going to get a trade. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. When I went to school and I was that age, I knew exactly what I was doing. Computers were the way of the world, so I was going to be a computer programmer. That was all there was to it. And all my friends, they had decided, oh, I'm getting married and having kids. And I thought, ugh. When my daughter was 13, 14, she was so overwhelmed. Like there was books this big. What would you like to do, darling? Let's start having a look at this. And she went, I don't know. And she was so overwhelmed by all of it that she became depressed. So moving forward, I just think it hasn't evolved enough to support the changes of the kids. And is it because they're scared? They're scared of trying something new. I mean, there's a lot of teachers that just do the mechanics. And when you talk to the teachers, they say, it's the parents that are saying, oh, you haven't done it well enough, or this. They were having parent-teacher interviews. And so the guy said, well, I'll have a chat to the parents. So he was having a chat to the father while getting the report information. He turned around to bring it across. The kid was on the ground. The father had just laid him out cold. And that wasn't that long ago. And it was like, you don't do the right thing. Others are saying like, you're supposed to be teaching my child. Why aren't you doing your job and teaching them and doing the right thing? And it's like, There has to be a happy medium because it ain't happening at the moment. Like, where do you go from all this?
I think this is part of the fourth turning where people lose belief and they don't put stock in the systems anymore because they see the systems are inherently broken.
Yeah.
And so the pendulum, I think, swings in really extreme ways, and there
Mm.
isn't a good middle ground. And I think that's sort of where we are. I think that's inherently part of being human. But it's
Mm.
interesting to sort of step back and see when there are people who have sort of built a business and teaching around that. It reminds me of a track meet where you have staggered starts if you're doing long distance. So
Yes.
that way you're accommodating for the being on an outside lane and having further to run because you're on the outside of the
Mm.
track. For people who are like, what is she talking about?
Yeah.
We have this staggered start. So our
Yes.
consciousness
Mm.
is in we're all evolving in different ways. We're at different points in our consciousness evolution. And for some people, they're really still stuck in the this is what it is, this is the system, this is how it is, and they just are hammering it home. And then I think there's other people who are like you and I, where we're like, okay, this isn't working. What's next? And looking at and taking in all these different ideas and all this information about what can we do to essentially change the future of humanity.
Yeah.
And what can we do to support what's happening as our world does grow and change? And
Mm.
how can we bring that down? That's a really big idea. How can we use that to help individual people?
Yeah.
And
Um, yeah. That's the $1,000,000 question. I mean, Japan and China, they went down to the one child policy because worried about overpopulation. So now they're under 2, they're 1.5 or something. So they're not even replacing their own population. Australia's the same, way below 2. There's only, I think, like 2 countries that are above, well above the 2 and 3. And so most people think, well, why do I want to bring a child into the world? Is it that we're scared of what the future holds? Is it that we're selfish? Because there are certain things that we've got accustomed to, and therefore, why do I want to share it with anyone else? If we're here for service, like that's what we're doing. I mean, for you to offer your service for free, it's huge. I mean, you're giving knowledge, time, love, and everything that goes as part of that package. And for people to say no, is it because they're frightened of what they could learn or that it may derail their thinking and therefore what is currently in place will no longer work because you won't believe it? Because at least if you don't know any better, then, well, this is working. This is what I'm doing. I've been doing it forever. So why should I change now? Or they have to start questioning, what is it that you're doing? Most teachers, again, are scared of parents because the parents tell them off. They have these verbalizations. Well, I hate to say this, parents are responsible for their children. If the children is misbehaving, it's like, what's happening here?
I see the same thing. And I'm like,
Mm.
what is going on?
Yeah.
Why? I just had an incident. A family I work with the little brother, but the older brother's in year 6
Mm.
and hit one of the year 6 teachers. And I'm saying that for context because the social context is quite a bit different for year 6
Yeah.
versus year 1.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
In front of all the year 6s, and that's would be at least 2 or 3 classes for the grade level,
Mm.
made a comment about you're not going on this excursion directed at this kid in front of everyone. It's behaviors like yours that we don't tolerate. If you have behaviors like so and so, you're not going either, as a general, as this generality. He missed about a week of school. And I said, I just don't understand what's happening inside of someone where they have
Yeah.
to do that to 11 or 12-year-old kid. But I see the same thing happening where teachers are doing and saying things like that to 5 and 6-year-old kids. And it astounds me one, that people speak to kids that way. I've heard people do it and just been floored that you talk to anyone that way, much less someone at a kid at your school. It's not like some random kid in the street who just knocked your mailbox over or something. And I think it goes back to exactly what you're saying, like the people who don't feel like they have power or
Mm,
who have these circumstances at home, and then they take it out on these kids at school. And I think
mm,
it's having a drastic impact. And I think a part of it too plays in with what you're saying with why don't they want this training? Why don't they want to take it in? Because I
yeah.
think you're opening Pandora's box. And once you
Mm,
open the box, you can't really shut it. You can't
mm,
unsee what you've seen. I also think for a lot of teachers in the system, their cognitive dissonance is so strong. And if that breaks, which is it will break them. One of my teacher friends, she's having that. She got suspended during COVID because she chose to not get the vaccine at that time. She's
yeah.
gone back to school to
Mm,
teach. It's been years, obviously, since then.
mm,
But they have a new principal, which I think is good for the school because I know about her principal, and her principal was not good as a school leader. So, really positive for the school. But she's
mm,
really struggling now because the principal's asking so much of the staff because essentially they're super behind on everything. And this new principal's trying to put these things in place, try to catch up a little bit, try to probably improve the image in the community. I think they would have the Department of Education on their back. Like, we know this is happening. You have to fix this and this and this and this.
mm,
My friend is feeling really overwhelmed with it and
mm,
really disenchanted with the education system and making comments like, I don't know how much longer I can stay here. The system is
yeah.
so broken. And this is 5 years after she got suspended.
Mm,
That didn't break her. She still believed in the system and was still willing to go back. And now she's like, oh, there's really a dark side here. And so just seeing that for my friend, I'm like, if she is doing this, I think there'd be a lot of other educators in the same boat. And we see it because we have teacher shortages everywhere. I think teachers are seeing it and leaving, and the other
yeah.
teachers are too scared to open the box
Mm,
because what else? What do you do? Like, how do you just walk away from $100,000 a year on average, for like, let's say, a middle aged teacher? How do you just walk away from that? Where do you go? What do you do? What other skills do you have? How do you pivot
mm,
that into something else? That's
yeah.
that's a lot.
When I was doing it, I went through the Catholic system. So therefore, I went through what is now the Australian Catholic University. And so therefore, the placings that you get are very different to going to state schools where you could get, a gamut of kids and cultures and all the rest of it. I didn't like the system back then. I don't think it's got any better. I would have dropped salary becoming a teacher. And I thought, why would I want to? The hours are crazy. The amount of work that you have to do after hours just to keep up with it was worse than working 7 days a week, 10, 12-hour days, because you never get out of it. It's always there and you're always thinking about it. So it has got worse. And some of my clients' patients that are teachers, they all they're all tearing their hair out. The ones in primary school have got a much better time out of it than the secondary school. But I think it's got much worse because some of them were just stressed. One of them was a kindergarten teacher and a prep. So therefore she could play music to the kids and do activities rather than have to teach them. But the others, the expectations, they were either getting it from the principal or they were getting it from the parents and they were getting the attitude from the kids. How can you teach like that?
You
The
can't.
system is definitely
You
broken.
can't. Yeah.
And so it would be nice if they understood that maybe it's time for a revamp. When companies have got to the state that there is so much sickness that either they get bought out and the debris gets got rid of, or they say, okay, we want to go forwards, we're going to change totally what we're doing. They can recognize when something's wrong. Why can't the education system look at it? Because really, it's a business. They get paid by the government, which is us, because we pay our taxes and rates, to actually empower and bestow information to the kids. That's the key, isn't it? Empowering them, not diminishing them, not breaking them, not, demoralizing them, but to empower them.
I
So how
think
do we do this?
inherent in these large systems, they're slow moving, it's red tape, and in the fourth turning, there's a lot of upper level bureaucracy that's weighing things down. And then we start looking at metrics that aren't important, like attendance. Schools are hyper focused on attendance, and everyone has to come 84% of the time. Why? That's like an abstract number that we've just assigned all of this. We've put all of this weight on. We're missing that in Australia. And so we're in this dinosaur of a system. But I also think this is part of the fourth turning where the systems collapse. During the Great Depression, the stock market collapsed, but it allowed all of these different businesses and avenues and ventures to crop up as possibilities. And with where we are in terms of consciousness and change, and we know we're moving out of like a Piscean era into an Aquarian era,
Aquarius.
and it is more about individuality and the startups and grassroots. And I think
Yeah.
we're going to see that. And now we can open these new schools and have these new ways of being. But it's a process.
Oh, I used to work for a government body and we had gates. There was about 6 gates you had to jump through. First of all, someone had to put in whether they're going to do a project. Is it going to be a capital project? Is it an operational project? So, and then another body looks at it, the next gate, another body looks at it, and it's just covered in bureaucracy. It's obviously not working. I mean, I wouldn't wish this, but the best thing that could happen is for the system to collapse on itself and for so many teachers that love what they do to be able to step up and say, let's create something new. Is it a utopia? Could be a utopia, but this isn't working. Something has to give, and it has to give before all the kids are medicated so that we can tick the boxes. And if the kids don't tick the boxes, like parents are at fault, because if you don't have your child at school under the age of 16, you can be incarcerated for it. So if we can't use the carrot, your child as a carrot, we'll use it as a stick. You pick.
Yep. I totally agree. We can see it and we're like, why isn't this happening? But
Yeah.
as someone who's starting a school, it's so arduous. It's so time consuming and all of
I
the
know.
hoops you have to jump through to get there. And we are just at the very, very beginning stages.
We need someone from the rest of society to come through and say, we'll help you financially set something up just to prove that this is right. I mean, if Rockefeller turned around and had his daughter lobotomized because, she's way too rowdy and we can't have her like this, what will people think of us? So let's lobotomize the child. How much damage are we going to do before we think that wasn't the right thing to do?
I think for normal people, the threshold is much lower than people the likes of Rockefeller and people who are in power. And so I think until we can get more people like you're saying, like I'll stake you on this, but essentially venture capitalism for schools. I'll
Yes.
stake you on this because I believe in this and this is the way we're going. This is what we need to do. And until we can have those things um, become the dominant paradigm in education, we're going to a majority of people, and some kids are going to these other schools. Lots of parents are pulling out altogether because the schools don't exist in homeschooling. Homeschooling numbers have gone through the roof in the past 5 years across Western countries, not just Australia, not just Brisbane. It's happening in the UK, it's happening in America, it's happening in Canada, because people are parents, and especially parents who are teachers, they are not sending their kids to school.
Yeah.
And if that isn't an indictment on what's happening, I don't know what is.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And unfortunately, we can't solve all the problems of the world, but it would be good if people did come together, because it's the collective that has the ability to make the change. I mean, when people talk, it's just hot air, but when people put things into action, then there is a subtle change that can happen. But until that happens, you're going to have frustrated parents, frustrated kids, very frustrated teachers. And the ones that are suffering the most, not only are the ones that are being taught now, but what kind of health issues that they're going to have. That's
Yeah.
one of my biggest concerns.
Yep, same. My original degree was in phys ed, but my uni instructors really talked about the whole child. That's how everything was positioned, the whole child, the whole child, the whole child. And so I
Yeah.
think that's really built a paradigm for how I think and how I look at things.
Mm.
And I'm not over here like saying take these supplements or do this, but a
Yeah.
lot of times I am raising things like retain primitive reflexes, all of these reflexes that we are supposed to integrate through a normal part of neurological development.
Yeah.
Kids are getting to school and they don't have integrated. And that some of them are
Yeah.
reflexes that we need to integrate by the time we're 6 months old. And
Mm.
so the kids have them because developmentally they don't have the functions happening to integrate them. So I talk to
Mm.
parents about that a lot. And some people look at me like I am completely nuts. Others, the ones who have worked on retained reflexes have seen big changes for kids. And they're typically kids who are diagnosed with ADHD and or autism.
Mm.
The another thing that I'm seeing a lot of benefits from is kids doing behavioral optometry, and not like, oh, your behavior changes because of your eye movement, but the behaviors of your eyes. And I find it interesting with the tie-in with EMDR and with brain spotting, and how our eyes and those motor pathways and our visual pathways hold trauma. And then kids have trouble, like they're having trouble reading, and sometimes their eyes aren't converging on
Yeah.
the letter or the word. But if we can get kids those pathways going again, it changes, especially the retained reflexes, it changes the neurological function in the brain, and the hemispheres talk better to each
Yes.
other, and
Yes.
they are more integrated. And then it's like a Maslow's hierarchy. Once you have those, you can go up
Yeah.
the hierarchy to
Mm.
address the other things that are happening.
Mm.
And so those to me are huge. And looking at, in the same lens, looking at the nervous system in terms of
Yeah.
regulation, and which I think it is tied into retained reflexes, but looking at
Mm.
that and looking at kids' behavior through that lens. As a teacher, you're having a normal human experience. You're driving to school. Maybe you got caught up at a train. Maybe you're late. Maybe your kids couldn't find their shoes and they left the house with two different shoes for school. So you're frazzled as a teacher. I find it so interesting when the teachers then get to school and wonder why their class is frazzled and why their kids won't settle.
Yeah.
And the teachers who have the highest levels of hypervigilance and whose nervous systems, they're just kind of chaotic and hectic, or the classroom is that in terms of furniture and supplies, that's they're not realizing that the kids are picking up on that and feeding off of that, and it's impacting their attitudes and behaviors. And
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Know thyself, and then you can help someone else. And if you haven't got, you can't give. So if your cup is empty, what are you going to give? Why? like, you can't give anything. You can't give love, time, patience, energy, nothing.
Mm.
So if you had one takeaway, what would you like to tell parents?
If I had one thing I could say to parents, it's don't stop advocating for your kids.
Yeah.
Don't stop pushing against the school. Don't, and not in an aggressive way, and not like I'm going to street fight you in the parking lot at Kmart kind of way. Um, like, don't stop asking questions. Don't stop putting forth new ideas. Don't stop bringing their specialists in for meetings with you.
Mm.
If you're presented with information, don't be afraid to pick it apart.
Yep.
Even if you're not a teacher, ask where the information came from. How did they get it? Plug the
Mm.
information in, de-identify it, plug it into Chat GPT, or,
Mm.
that, like AI, what a good tool to use for parents who aren't teachers to plug information in. And then you can ask, you do have to tell, excuse me, ChatGPT to not fawn and tell you how great the materials are, because it loves to
Mm.
do that. But if you ask it to critically read and assess what's happening and look for gaps, it can do that. And we have these tools at our fingertips. So if parents can keep doing that and keep doing that and keep doing it, it is a long road. It is
Mm.
tiring. At times it's painful and frustrating, but the kids have better outcomes. They have
Yeah,
much
100%.
better outcomes at school when the parents keep asking questions and they are the squeaky wheel. And you kind of have to abandon, is this annoying in the school? Like, if it is too bad, they need to improve what they're doing so you don't have to keep
Mm.
asking the questions.
100% agree. It's like when I teach, I tell my students, because I teach yoga and I bring in clinical trials and all sorts of things. I say, don't believe what I say. Believe in what feels right for you. Go out, question it, grow as a person. Just keep asking. Don't believe when someone tells you something because A, it may not resonate with you, but B, it's like when we look at social media, it's like, where did they get that from? I mean, the DSM stuff, they can check it online and it's like it's all there. And some of the stuff is absolutely brilliant. But keep questioning, never give up. Like your greatest gift is your child, because not only do you teach them, but they teach you. And so it's this beautiful evolution. And the more people that advocate for their kids, the better it is for everybody the teacher, the system, themselves. And I wish we could go on and continue talking because there are so many more rabbit holes to go down.
Definitely.
Sarah, thank you so much for your time. It's been, as always, wonderful, enlightening. And the biggest problem that I see with a lot of the schools is trying to get the funding for new things to be started. And they've got lots of paperwork. And when we start, we don't have a lot of paperwork and we create it. So instead of creating mountains of paperwork, we can just let the kids help us evolve.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And thank you so much for having me on again. I love the conversations that we have and all of the ideas and
Yeah.
thoughts that they evoke.
Thank you, Sarah. Look after yourself.
Yeah, same to you. Thanks.
Thank you.